and welcome to another edition of our Heart to Heart chats. Today, I am zooming in my dear friend Lauren Griffin Rosario. Her and I met, I don't want to say how many years ago, but quite a while ago because we were both studying education together at University of Miami. And today she's opening up about her journey about loving somebody through their addiction, becoming a single mom, and life after. Lauren, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me. It's so good to see you.
It's so great to see you. I don't want to say how long it's been since we saw each other last because then it would just show evidence to our age. But once upon a time, we did study elementary education together at the University of Miami, and that's how far back we go.
Just a couple years ago.
So, what has life?
Like that long ago.
No, it really doesn't. It just feels like yesterday. But how has life been since then, Lauren?
It's been good. It's been good. Well, it has ups and downs, of course, but I guess this might show my age. My oldest daughter is thinking about college already. When school starts this coming month in August, she will be a sophomore in high school. Gabriella,
That's crazy.
16 in October. It is crazy. It is crazy. So the last, 16 years have been being her mommy, learning from her probably more than she's learned from me. And, being a teacher. So elementary education has become a big part of my life, even from then. So teaching for the past 12 years. So it's been pretty much kids are my life. So.
And not so long ago, you expanded your family as well with another little one.
Yes, Angelina, the baby of the family. She's now 16.
Sweet.
So she's doing so much now. She's feisty and funny and the best.
That's amazing. You shared with me prior to joining us on our recording today that the journey to get to her 16-month half birthday has not been an easy one for you. Let's start back at the beginning and please tell me how it is that you met your husband.
So he was traveling. He was a carpenter. He was very proud of his work. He always liked to say that he was the best and he would scrutinize other people's work. We would go to hotels and he would be looking at the work and he was just very proud of his work. So he was traveling and so his work brought him to Florida and that's how our paths crossed in 2021. And so while he was here, he was in Central Florida and we went on a date. He took me out. And from there, we were kind of just together. And so he would come back to Florida any chance he had. And eventually I talked him into kind of placing roots here and kind of getting off the road.
And what was life like in your early days of your relationship?
They were really good. He was just funny. Like he was a character. And I just found his idiosyncrasies so funny. So he was Puerto Rican, born in New York, but he was raised in Jacksonville, North Carolina. So he had this twang, and I had never seen a Latino with such a twang in his voice, and it was
That's
so
funny.
funny. And he was kind of OCD about certain things. Like he always had to have his chapstick, and he would always brush his hair. He had those waves, so he'd always brush his hair a million times a day, and
Yeah.
he showed love through food. He would always be sure I ate and he'd ask, did you like it? And he, when we would get coffee, even if we got the same one, he would let me taste both and I would get to pick the best one. And so he just did little sweet things that, little things when you look back that seem silly are the things that you miss.
Of course, of course. Was there any signs that he was battling addiction early on in your relationship?
So, to an extent, he was open about his past. He did have a past of being incarcerated. He did tell me that he had struggled with addiction, but he did not tell me that it was kind of current. So, I was more under the impression that he had some recovery under his belt, so to speak. So I thought that he had been clean for a long time. I thought that maybe he had been working a program and that it wasn't necessarily something that he was current. I didn't think that he was like an active addiction. What I didn't realize was that I guess it looks different for everyone, and that he was able to go long periods of time with not using, but then he would go on binges, and then again he would repeat the cycle. So he would binge, but then he could go months without using. So I guess to an extent I was naive and didn't realize that that could be a pattern of use. I just thought that if you were an active addiction, that it was like all day, every day, you were using, like you could tell. And so I didn't know until there was a point where there was a night where he disappeared. I didn't hear from him. And then I started to recognize his patterns of when he would go use.
Hi, this is Brianna, designer behind Brianna Handmade Jewelry. I'm so grateful to share my story with the Heartfull Living community. As a thank you, I'd love to gift you an exclusive code. Use HEART15 at checkout for something special from my collection. From my heart to yours. Enjoy!
And at this point, were you already married? Was it easy for him to conceal in the early days of your relationship?
So it was easier towards the beginning of our relationship when we were just dating because he was traveling. So when he was traveling, he was kind of left to his own devices. So he had access to travel. So he was away. He kind of didn't really have to answer to anybody. And so I wouldn't necessarily think anything of what he was doing. But I started to recognize some of the behaviors. So he was pretty good with communication, but he did not like to communicate with anyone, not just me. He didn't like to communicate with anyone when he was using. I think it was a sense of not only not wanting to have to answer to someone, but also a sense of like, he didn't want anyone to see him that way or to hear him that way. So I think even when he was in active use, he felt a sense of embarrassment. So he would kind of disappear from the world. And so I think that was part of what drove me to push him to leave being on the road and traveling for work. I think in a sense, I thought, well, maybe if he's home all the time, that will help with the problem. But really,
Sure.
problems can follow you. And they did. So even when he left and he was home all the time, there were still problems. So, he could still find ways to use here. It would be the same pattern of, I wouldn't hear from you. I couldn't count on you to do what you said you would do. You would disappear with the car. You would, just all the things that come with addiction and not being able to rely on that person because they're in the disease, they're in the addiction. And
Sure.
so, it's hard because they find a reason to use. If they're doing really well, they feel like they can reward themselves. Well, I've been doing so well. If they're struggling, well, I'm really struggling, so I need to feel better. And he even told me that himself. Like, that was his thought process.
Right, right. How did that impact his relationship with your firstborn from your previous relationship with Gabby?
That was really difficult because I think initially Gabby was hopeful. I think she wanted to have a bond with him. I think she wanted to have a strong relationship with him, but then he let her down. And a lot of people have let her down. And so I think once things started to get worse and she kind of saw things like, you try to shield your kids, but she's smart.
Yeah.
And she's aware, even though I tried to clean up a lot of messes behind the scenes, she was still aware of a lot of things. And I think she wanted me to leave sooner than I did.
Right. So let me backtrack a little bit. I'm assuming that he went through a time of sobriety when you first got married, and those were good times for you. And then I know you were very hesitant, although you were dying to become a mom again. You were also hesitant. Can you tell us why?
Yes. So I I wanted so badly to have another baby. But I also told him that I didn't want to do this by myself again, because for the most part with Gabby, it was just her and I, which created a very special bond. We were like the Gilmore Girls, the best of friends, and also mother and daughter. And
Right.
so, which is very special. And in a sense, I'm very, very grateful for that and the time that we shared together. But I also was not blind to the struggles that came with it. And so I told him, I was like, listen, I want this so badly, but I also don't want to do this all by myself again. So we have to both be in this. Ugh. And he always had a way of making me feel like everything was going to be okay. And it's always that cliche of when things were good, they were so good. And I think that's what always drew me back, is that when they were good, they were so good.
Sure. Sure. So your prayers are answered and you and Junius were expecting. What was he feeling in that moment to find out he was going to be a father again?
He was really excited. And then into the pregnancy, we decided we wanted to find out what we were having. So we went together and we found out we were hoping for a girl. And so we found out that we were having a girl and we were really, really excited. And so, and we already knew the name would be Angelina after his late mom. So Angelina is named in honor of his mother who had passed when he was very little, when he was very young. So we knew we were going to have our Angelina. And so we were very, very excited. But then in October, everything shifted again.
And how far along were you in your pregnancy at this point?
So I found out that I was expecting Angelina in June. And then in October was when we hit a really, really rough patch. So I was about 4 months pregnant.
Can you share with us a little about what that turning point was like for you in October?
So we had gotten married in March. And from there, we were doing pretty well. There was kind of a tough point in August. So then after that, I was like, listen, we really need to buckle down. So he came home. He was doing really, really well. We found out we were having a girl. He was working, in town. He was like doing extra side jobs. He was doing really well. But then one night he went out and he was supposed to be doing, he was supposed to be working. But it started to get late and I got nervous.
Sure.
I started to not hear from him. And I worried. And I knew what it meant because I just recognized those behaviors. I just knew, okay, he's not going to come home. So I was like, well, what can I do? And at the time, we only had one car that was functional. He was using it. I was like, okay, well, I'm probably going to have to call out of work. So I had to call out of work. Gabby couldn't go to school. I'm pregnant. I'm worrying about him because, you always worry. You never know how it's going to end up. I knew that
Sure.
he tried to take money out of my account. Like I could kind of track what he was doing. And then he finally comes home. And of course, it's the usual. He was apologetic. And I wasn't having it. I had enough at that point. And he had been apologetic, but then it reached the point where it escalated. So he started to get angry also. I will own my part. I did say some terrible things. He started to get angry.
Sure.
I decided that I wanted to leave. He started to get angry. He didn't really want me to leave. So it kind of became this like back and forth of this yelling. I won't go into too much detail, but police were called, my parents were called, the neighbors could, hear things. And it was probably the one time that I actually felt like it wasn't a safe environment for Gabby and I. It was I never felt unsafe.
Endangered.
Right. I had never really felt that before. I may have felt like unsettled or nervous or worried, but this was actually where I was like, I just don't want to be here. We can't be here. And so my parents came and got us, and we just went to their house, and he stayed at the apartment. He kept the car, and we just left. And so we started to slowly go and get things from the apartment. I was like, well, he can just stay there. I just want to be out of there. And eventually he left and he went to Jacksonville.
And so at that point, you had you're 3 or 4 months pregnant. And you went on those months pretty much with him at a distance. So you're back where you didn't want to be, which was a single mom pregnant again, correct? How was your pregnancy this time around with this situation that you're in?
You're listening to the Heart to Heart podcast with Cristy Diaz for Heartfull Living, where stories, connection, and intention guide everything we do. Interested in partnering with us? We're always open to collaborations that align with intention, creativity, and community. If you feel your brand is a match, we'd love to connect and explore what we can create together. And now back to listening.
It was difficult. And then it was also physically, it was kind of challenging just because with Gabby, I was in my early 20s. With Angelina, I was in my late 30s. So it was just different. So I was more tired. And it was so much more monitoring. They love to throw around the term advanced maternal age. I was like, okay, guys, thank you so much.
For your late 30s.
Thank you so much. And please don't call me Jerry. I was like, please don't call me
a geriatric.
saying that. So they had to monitor, and so it was difficult, and it was hard because, you have to keep, I thank God because it kept me going. Like, I was still really looking forward to Angelina, and I still had Gabby to take care of. So it was like I had to keep pushing forward, even though things were kind of just so up in the air. There was so much going on. It was like I went through like 3 different doctors, and I had all these issues with Junius, and there was just so much going on. But I just had to find saving graces where I could.
Of course. And at this point, was Junius aware of your day-to-day with your pregnancy, or did you choose at that point to build a wall of communication, or lack of communication, I should say?
He really didn't communicate much. I think, so we had separated in October. I think it was around November that I tried to go to Jacksonville, Florida, where he had been staying, and I was trying to get the car from him. So I went up there, and he never showed. And so that was like another disappointment. And it was so embarrassing because it was with a gentleman my dad knows from the airport. My dad is retired police, and he works at the airport security. And there was a driver that brought me up there to Jacksonville. And he took me to this really rough neighborhood, and we're there waiting for Junius to bring his car. He never showed. And then he's like, okay, Lauren, I'll meet you at Walmart. We went there. He sent me on like a wild goose chase, and he never showed. And so then I had to like tell my parents another story about Junius dropping the ball. And then in front of my dad, like a man my dad knows from work, had to come back without the car and just say, sure, like, I'm so sorry. Like another embarrassment. Like I felt like I was always trying to advocate for Junius, and I was always trying to say, oh, no, like throughout like our relationship, always trying to cover and clean up messes and hide things and fix things. And there just came a point where I just couldn't. Like he had to do it for himself. So I really there was a point where I just really didn't want to communicate. He was trying to communicate, but I was very apprehensive.
And as Angelina's birth date loomed closer and closer, was he aware of her arrival date? Was he aware or trying to be a part of her arrival date?
I would give him information, but it was kind of minimal. It was kind of like just updates on how she was doing, like how doctor's appointments went. Um, it was, I don't want to say it was formal, but it wasn't as warm and fuzzy as maybe it would have been if we were on better terms.
Right. So what did her delivery day look like then?
So Junius really, really wanted to be there, and he really wanted to reconcile things. And I was on the fence. I know how badly he wanted to be there, but I just felt like I didn't know if I could rely on him. At that point, he was in sober living. I didn't know if he could get there in time. And, my family had really been my backbone through all of this. And
Sure.
I was like, I didn't want to have some sort of issue at the hospital where, this is the first time where my mom would see my estranged husband. And I wanted it to be a beautiful day. And
Of course.
it ended up being a challenging day, beautiful in the end, but challenging because that day I knew something was wrong. Angelina had always been really, really, really active. And that day she wasn't. And I was like, oh my gosh. I tried to drink lemonade. I was like, oh, maybe the sugar will get her to, move around. I was past my due date. I was like, oh my goodness, I need to go in. So initially they were going to induce me, but they didn't think her poor little heart could take it. So then they decided that it was time to have an emergency C-section. So thank God, grace of God, she was fine. My mom was there to support me. And she came into the world. She was tiny, but so mighty. She was 6 pounds with bright red hair, which just, I swear, keeps getting redder and longer. And she's just beautiful and fiery. And
That's amazing. That's amazing. Uh, when he went through rehab and sober living, was there any glimmers of hope that perhaps he could be a part of her life again and yours?
there were, I was proud of him when he started to say, like, he would hit milestones and he would get, like, the coins. And he was telling me that he would take on leadership roles in the meetings. And he told me the biggest thing was he told me that he was praying.
Which you are such a woman of faith. As long as I've known you, you've always been. So, was this something that he was not a man of faith before, or I should say he wasn't religious, or he didn't have a faith that he practiced?
He did not. So when we met, he described himself as agnostic. So he was kind of like, well, I don't really know. But then there were times where we would get into arguments because he would say that it was like nonsensical. It was stupid to believe. It was stupid to pray. And I was like, how can you say that? Because he had told me about his life and all that he had been through. And I was like, how do you think you've made it this far? I was like, it's by the grace of God you made it this far. I can't believe you don't believe in anything. And so from going through treatment, he told me that he was praying. And I was like, at first, I didn't believe him. But he's like, no, I'm really praying. And that was in the last few months of his life, which I do find some comfort in, that he found God before the end of his life.
So, without getting into the future yet, I'd love to ask you how Junius reacted to meeting his daughter for the first time. Did he meet her at the hospital or once you left?
He met her once I left. I thought that it would be best for some time to pass. I was like, well, let me heal a little bit, let everything get settled. I was sending her pictures. He was in love already. And, he was being so sweet. And I think with the euphoria of having a new baby, I was being a little soft, and I was more open to reconciling, and so we were talking more regularly and kind of like we had before everything had happened. And so a couple weeks after she was born, he started to come and visit us more regularly, and so we would go and have family days, and we would take pictures, and she had her first visit with the Easter bunny, and we all took a picture together, and it was just really cute. And he would go shopping, and he would just buy like little sneakers for her and little outfits, and he was just so excited to the way like she would just look at him and he would look at her, and he was just always so excited to hold her and take care of her. And
Were there moments at that moment in time that you felt like perhaps Angelina was healing Junius?
I think so. I think that there I think he was hopeful that she would be his second chance. He has grown children, and I know that he made a lot of mistakes because he struggled with addiction from really early on in his life. So even when they were little, and they're adults now, and some of them have children.
Right.
And so I think that, Angelina was a fresh start. She
Right.
she didn't know about anything. She's just a baby that.
Right. So, for the most part, in her first, right, in the first months with Angelina or weeks with Angelina, you guys were all in this baby bubble, as I like to call it.
Yes.
Did that bring you and Junius closer again?
It did. It was really nice because I had never really had that before, where it was, I was able to spend time, with the father of my child, and like we were able to laugh about things that she did, and spend time together, and like I look at her features, and just be together like a family. I never really had that. So
Right.
it was nice. It was nice to do that, even if it was for like short periods of time. It was nice to do that.
Can you share with us what your last conversation with Junius was like?
So while we were navigating life together but apart, we were trying to figure out if, we should stay married, if, I was trying to figure, where are we going with this? And so is he. And, I had some conditions, some terms that I really needed him to follow. And I was concerned. And our last conversation, I told him, I don't want anyone else. I do want our family, but this is what I need from you. So I need you to decide what you would like. And so we had been texting, and so he called me and he said, well, I want that too. And we're going to figure it out one way or another. And that was the last time we spoke.
What happened in the days that followed?
So we spoke on a Wednesday night, and he was supposed to come see us on Thursday. So he had been traveling. He recently got a traveling job. He had left sober living. So this was all so in May, I think he got the traveling job. He moved. And then, so at this point, it was June. So June 12th was the last time we spoke. June 13th, he was supposed to come and visit us. And I didn't hear from him. And I was like, ugh. I was like, oh, Jesus, why? Like, why are you doing this? So, I was so angry, and he was like, rage texting. And I was like, why wouldn't you come see us? Like, we got you Father's Day gifts. And, and so then more time passed. I started to reach out to his job, to his, his former housemates at Sober Living. I was trying to figure out if anybody had heard from him. Nobody had heard from him. So then I was like, well, is this just his usual MO of using and not speaking to anybody. Like, I knew his address, but I didn't know who his roommate was. It's like, ugh, I don't want to have to drag a baby up there and go look for him. So another day passed. The 14th came. I didn't hear from him. And looking back, I probably should have known that something was wrong because I saw a cardinal and it was like, oh, I wonder who's visiting. So later that night, I was like, I still haven't heard from him. So I called the Jacksonville Police Department to do a welfare check. I called the non-emergency line and I told them the situation. I told them the address and, that I was concerned. So they said that they would go to the address and that they would look into it to see if he was okay. My hope was that he was either there using or that he was out using. A lot of time passed, or it felt like a lot of time. And then I got a phone call from a detective. He worked for a special unit for the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. They investigate overdose deaths. They had found Junius deceased. He was there at his home. They believed that I was the last person he had spoken to, and that he had been there since. And they believed that it was accidental. There was no note or anything like that. And they had found drugs and drug paraphernalia, and that they were going to investigate his death in order to try to prosecute the people that supplied the drugs.
Lauren, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I know that whoever it was that called you that day, the detective, you actually found a lot of comfort in him. Can you share how it was that he comforted you?
He was just so kind, because at times like that, you just have so many questions. And I think that there's a sense of guilt and there's a sense of denial. And he was just very patient and very kind with me, because I asked, well, if I had called sooner, would he have made it? Because these are questions I still ask, like, what if I called sooner? Did he suffer? Was he scared? And he just said that, Lauren, you have to keep moving forward. You can't focus on that. And, I think part of me then was kind of in denial. And I was like, I would ask silly questions. Like, logically, I knew it was Julius. He was found in his apartment. His license was there. Logically, I knew. But I had to ask questions. I was like, well, my husband always wore flip-flops in the shower. Was this gentleman wearing just silly questions, because I think your mind tries to find comfort and tries to deny the truth. And he was so sweet and answered every question, whether it was rational or irrational. And he was just so kind, and he walked me through the steps, and he really helped me. And so I really appreciated that. And, he really helped me a lot. And I was just so grateful that it was him that made the phone call. Of course, he prefers to do things in person, but because we were so far, he made the phone call, and I just appreciated him that even though it was via phone, he was still so comforting.
There's a statement that you made to me the first time that we spoke about Junius's passing, and that is that everybody deserves to die with dignity, even if you had an accidental overdose or passed in a way, that wasn't natural. Can you speak more to that?
I think that was one of the things that was so hard with his passing, was knowing that he was there and he was by himself, and he was on the bathroom floor for 2 days by himself. And it just broke my heart because I just feel like he deserved better. And I know that a lot of times people,
It's okay. Take your time.
when they struggle with addiction, they get villainized. And they do a lot of messed up stuff. I will not romanticize a lot of the things that my husband did. But I still wish that at the end of his life, he was not alone and that he was not there for 2 days. And I think that's something that I'll struggle with because there's so many questions. And I think that's was so hard when he initially passed. I don't think it was that I was so suspicious of the circumstances. I think it was just there were so many questions that I couldn't answer. Like, I don't know how quickly things transpired. And I don't mean to be graphic. I just, and I don't know if he was scared. I don't know if he was cognizant of what was happening. And I just, it's sad that he was there. And, I think everybody deserves better.
I admire you so much for your bravery and your courage in sharing your story with us, because I think that addiction and accidental overdoses are something that are still not spoken about openly. I think that they're still considered taboo, and it could happen to anybody. It could knock on any household door. And the fact that you're coming forward with the story and showing that it can happen to anybody is just proof of it does happen. And there has to be more awareness for it. And I know that you've been doing your part in keeping Junius's memory alive and raising awareness. Can you tell us what that is?
Well, after he passed, I've just been hyper aware of different organizations and different events that, help to spread awareness and help to honor those who have lost their battle with substance use. And one of the organizations that I really love that are local to Volusia County is the Volusia Recovery Alliance. I'm actually wearing one of their shirts. It says End Overdose. It's purple, which is the color for overdose. Last year, we attended an annual event that they have. It's called Keeping Hope, Overdose Awareness and Remembrance Day. And so we went, and it was a really, really beautiful event. They have different vendors, and the best part was, though, that you could purchase a sign in honor of a loved one that lost their battle with addiction due to an overdose, and they had it around this beautiful lake, and they just did different events to honor their memory, and they had like activities for kids. We actually made a sweet little tie-dye shirt for Angelina. She was only a few months at the time, but this year we're going to go to the event that they're hosting, and she's going to wear it in honor.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Buenos dias or buenas tardes. This is the Heart to Heart podcast for Heartfull Living. My name is Betty Pastelitos. I am also known as Miss Betty. And for all the parents and teachers out there looking for a fun, simple, easy way to make learning engaging and fun, check out my workbooks, Brillando Books, on Amazon and through my website. Here you'll find workbooks that are created in order to make learning engaging and fun, but also easy for you to implement. See you around.
They just do a lot to support people in recovery and to spread awareness. They also hand out tons of Narcan, which is a name brand for naloxone, which is something that can be used if someone is overdosing. It only works if they're overdosing on a drug that is considered an opioid. So like fentanyl, heroin, things like that. So for Junius, this would have not been beneficial. He died of cocaine intoxication. So this would not have helped him, but in a lot of instances, it would. So if somebody is overdosing on a drug that's considered an opioid, this would be helpful. Um, for Junius, it would not have helped him, but what would have helped him was if he was not alone. So a lot of times when people use, they are alone, which is just a big risk factor. Other risk factors include if you're mixing drugs, if you're drinking, if you've been in recovery for a long time, but you're relapsing. So our hope is, of course, that people will get clean and recover. But there are resources too if you are using alone. There is a website called neverusealone.com. And there are peers there that you can give your information to if you're using. And it's not to get you in trouble. It's just so that they have your information. And if you're using and they stop hearing from you, they will send EMS in case, just to make sure that you are not overdosing or having any sort of complications. A lot of the people that volunteer identify as either people that are in recovery or even active drug users or moms that have lost their children to overdose. It is just a risk reduction program to try to help people and meet them where they are, because too many people are being lost to overdose, and we just need to get the word out there because, like you said, it is taboo, but it's happening. I go to these events and I see all these beautiful faces on signs. It's happening.
And beautiful families there too, keeping their story alive and their legacy alive as well. Lauren, another valuable piece of information that you shared with me, which I actually didn't know about, is that you can call your local police department and ask for wellness checks.
Yes. And it could be for anything. Like if you have a friend you haven't heard from, if they have, mental health issues, or an elderly neighbor, or anyone that you're concerned about that you maybe haven't heard from or you haven't seen in a while. All you have to do is call the local police department, the non-emergency line, and you can say that you want a wellness check or a welfare check, and you just give them some information and they will go and make sure that that person is okay. And usually they will follow up if you want to follow up, and they'll let you know what's going on. And hopefully everything's okay, and they'll give you good news and a good update.
That's amazing information. How has your faith helped you rebuild, and what will you tell Angelina about her dad as she gets older?
My faith has helped me a lot. I actually had stepped away, not from my faith, but from church for a little while. And after Junius died, I won't lie, I was angry with him. And, on this side, I can find empathy. But at the time when I was really in the thick of it, I was angry. And I remember I had read a book by a pastor about forgiveness. And he has a local church here that I actually ended up attending. And I asked to pray with him. And from there, I joined a women's group, and I befriended a lot of people, and I started going to their church, even though it's not a typical church that I would necessarily attend. It's just been very healing. They really helped me through a very, very difficult time. And so I think that helped to carry me through. And with Angelina, I just want her to know all of the good things about her dad. When I spoke at his celebration of life, I described him in, I described all the labels that he wore throughout his life. And not once did I mention addict, not once did I mention, convict or anything like that. I just want her to know all the good things and all the attributes that she gets from him. And, I tell her, she doesn't really understand now, but I still tell her stories. And I even still talk to him sometimes and tell him, what she's doing. And
That's sweet, Lauren. Lauren, I can't thank you enough for opening up to us today. You're living proof that although you can't rewrite the story, you can always honor with love afterwards. and keep legacies alive. And the information that you've given today, I am sure is going to help many people out there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us today, everybody. Bye-bye.
Heart to Heart is where real stories meet real connection. Hosted by Cristy Diaz, founder of Heartfull Living. This podcast opens the door to honest, unfiltered conversations about life's most meaningful and sometimes messy chapters. From personal journeys of resilience and healing to experiences with love, loss, family, and finding purpose, Heart to Heart is a space for the stories that deserve to be heard. Every episode is rooted in authenticity, empathy, and the belief that when we share our stories, we remind each other we're not alone. Join the conversation because the best talks always come from the heart.